Well, this is we're having an opportunity to talk with my mother, Rosemary Gutierrez, a little bit about some of the memories that I have of our time together, and our family's journey, to this point. And I think John and I were talking about the timeline from the time you were born in Scranton, to the time that you moved to New York, to the time you moved to D.C., and then from D.C. to Roanoke. It's basically been 4 places, right?
DC to
Oh, we
Florida.
forgot about Miami, Norfolk, and Miami. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, well, kind of what has that experience been? What has been the experience been like? Is there any, um, um, one place that's been of all the places that you've lived, was maybe New York was maybe your favorite in the time in the 1940s?
Oh, the New York years were really, really good. Yeah, let's see. Well, let's see. I was born in Pennsylvania, lived in New York 10 years, lived in Washington, D.C., more than 10 years. Then we went to Miami, Florida. Then we went to Norfolk, Virginia. Then we came to Northern Virginia.
Yep.
And you were all coming along the way. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think the most important years for me were probably New York City, because it was a fantastic place to grow up in, and it many, many resources and many wonderful experiences of life there. But being a Navy wife, you move around a lot, and that's what happened.
You became a Navy wife in 1949 when you married my dad.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And then we just moved from one place to another. And I was so glad. We almost got to go to Guantanamo. We just missed it by just a few months, because they were sending the dependents home, and I was so glad. And the major worry about me going to Cuba was, should I take my piano?
The same piano, by the way, which is in Regina's apartment right now, the acrosonic piano.
Because I thought, I don't know, I didn't know what to do with it, so I thought, well, we leave it here. But then we didn't get to go, and I was so glad we didn't get to go. I was so glad, because it was not a good place to be, Cuba at that time, So.
Yeah, well, Dad was traveling every year and a half practically, and of course, if there was any stability in our lives, we all needed stability.
Right.
So we would stay. We were 3 years in Miami, and then 3 years in Norfolk.
Yeah.
And there was time during that time, Dad, changed jobs and changed locations
Constantly.
a couple times, different times. Yeah.
Constantly, yeah.
And when we went to Northern Virginia, I remember you saying the reason being is because you wanted to be close to Graham.
Yeah.
And you wanted to be.
Yeah, well, also the thing is, when you're Navy and once you retire, you have a year to move free. The government will move you. And I knew I was not going to stay in Norfolk. No way, no how. So that's when I decided we were going to go to Northern Virginia. And your dad wanted to retire in Puerto Rico, and I said, no way, Puerto Rico. I said, no. So he went there anyhow, and got a job with Defense Intelligence Agency.
Oh, really?
And it has a huge listening disc.
Yep. Mike was, right?
Yeah, radio coming from South America, and he was acting as an interpreter. And they would gather these little bits of information coming from South America, and then they would send it out to Washington, and somebody in Washington put a large jigsaw puzzle together so that they were getting an idea of what was going on in Cuba and in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, they were very worried. I think
yeah.
he was very worried about revolution spreading through South America.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was, and at the time, and they had people like they had Che Guevara in Bolivia at one point, and they were worried about that. I think they were kind of paranoid about it, in my opinion. But there was a worry of the government at the time. And Dad, when he was in Miami, he was above ground. CIA work at that time.
Yeah, but he was doing overt work then. It wasn't covert; it was overt. Yes, but yes, They were checking on the Cuban immigrants coming through. Let's see, they were trying to catalog them, giving them where they lived in Miami, and some of them gave addresses in the middle of a canal, all sorts of things. They just didn't want to be identified, That was part of the job that he did there.
Yeah, tracking down those folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, when you moved to Miami, it was such a different move. We were in D.C. We were in Southeast D.C. When we grew up in Southeast D.C. in an apartment complex, the Greenway apartments, and it was a kind of the move to Miami was that it seems to me it was prompted by the whole Cold War thing, and it was by because they wanted to have intelligence people in Miami. Would you say that was true?
Yeah, they were cataloging the refugees coming through, and they needed someone who was bilingual, and that he fit in quite well there. Yeah. I didn't like Miami. It's too hot. It's too humid. And I'm sure that we had a couple incidences in around Miami where I'm sure we were being tailed by probably maybe Castro agents. We don't know, but I have incident. Do you remember the accident we had on Biscayne Boulevard in Miami?
I don't remember that. No.
And that was deliberate. I'm sure it was.
But,
and they cars parked outside your street, down the street a little bit, and you knew nobody was sitting there. You didn't know these people, but I'm sure they cataloged it.
And it probably wasn't the Castro agents; it was the Omega-7 folks, the anti-Castro Cubans, who were so active in that area. I was amazed when I went to Coral Gables, Mom, in 1995, and saw it in better shape than when we were there in the 1960s. It was things that it looked even better. And when it was the first year we were in Coral Gables, Coral Gables was kind of an exclusive community.
Yes, it was. Yeah, yeah, it was.
And it still is. It still is to this day.
It still is. Yeah. Yeah. It still is today, right? Yes. In fact, I think it's known as a Little Cuba or Little Havana today, because the Cuban refugees moved in and kind of took over the place, and it's a beautiful place. It was a good place to take over, so to speak.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Funny. And when I went back to Miami in 1995, where we had lived in West Miami, there were all Hispanic families living there now, and the shopping center that was there was an overtly bilingual shopping center with all Spanish language businesses. Yeah. And that shopping center that was right there, not too far from Coral Way in that intersection, in that area.
The teaching experience down there was good for me because that's when I was trained to teach English as a second language.
Right.
And that came in very, very handy, especially when you moved out of the Miami area.
Yeah.
Right? So it was really good grounding in teaching English,
Yeah. Did you teach at the same school the whole time we were in Miami? I forget.
Yes, yeah. It was, they had an interesting problem in Israel at the time because Israel was getting a lot of refugees from all over Europe, and they were trying to teach the people that were coming from different cultures in Europe Jewish. And so they were having the same problem with having to teach Yiddish to all these people that were coming in from all over Europe. So it was similar to what was going on in Miami. So we would have people coming in from Israel to observe teaching methods. Interesting, So.
That's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
Was the move to Miami from Norfolk a kind of a sudden move, or was that did you kind of know it was coming 6 months in advance?
Let me see. No, let's see. I think your dad's assignment was up, something like that. And they had run out of refugees to interview. So it was time for transfer. Yeah.
So he transferred to Norfolk. Norfolk's where the biggest Navy is, like Navy Central. It's where the U.S. Navy has its major headquarters, its major deployment headquarters, and everything. Yeah. And Dad worked for a moment. For the first year, was right in the heart of it in Syncland, what they call Syncland. It was I remember Dad having some trouble with that particular assignment. That was kind of like he didn't get along with people there.
He didn't like the assignment because when he came from Cuba, he was a translator and interpreter.
Right.
And so when he was put into a new job in Norfolk, he wasn't doing that, and he didn't like it. It was strictly kind of clerical work, so it really didn't interest him at all. He wanted to hurry up and get out of there. But he was a year from retirement anyhow. So the reason why he went to New York is because when you enter, wherever you are entering, wherever you enter the service, they send you back there to be discharged. So he had to go and live in New York for a year.
Right, exactly. You
Discharge,
returned
yeah.
to your home base
And
20
that's
years
why we
later,
stayed
right?
in Norfolk, yes. There wasn't any point going back to New York for a year. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And he just went, he was just there for the year. And then he
Yeah.
came back to DC, and then he went to Puerto Rico. Is that what happened?
Yeah. Well, he took an assignment in Puerto Rico.
He did.
And I didn't think it was a good idea for us to go down there for just a year.
Right.
Because we didn't know what the assignment was. And
Yeah.
at the end of the year, he said he liked it there. He wanted to stay there, and I didn't think it was a good idea for us because you and Gina was
Mhm.
11 and you were 13.
Right,
See, it's
exactly.
not good
1968.
years to make a change.
Yeah.
So he decided to stay there, and I said, well, okay, you stay there, but I'm staying here. And then after a while, you know, you have nothing in common anymore. So he continues to stay there, and I said, I was no way I was going to go down there. And that's when we moved to Northern Virginia.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good,
So-
good.